Friends, welcome to this episode of Leadosophy. You're here with an open mind because that's the rule, not the exception. Milestone for me today. This is episode number 50, not including the interviews that I've done in the past with other thought leaders. So this is a highlight of my day here, episode number 50. Today's episode is going to be about not taking ourselves too seriously. I got this idea from my wife, actually, and I'll talk about where that idea came from and why I wanted to do this show. What happens if we do take ourselves too seriously in a leadership role? What could be some of the downside effects, especially on others, maybe even to ourselves? We'll talk about that and more on this episode. Thanks for watching. Here we go.
Are you ready to permanently fuse leadership and philosophy? Then a word of caution. You are about to enter the fully abstract yet wholly concrete realm of Leadosophy. Our ideas are not always so clear and distinct. To validate this proposition, we welcome the host of Leadosophy, Tim Woody.
Friends, welcome back to Leadosophy. Glad you are here with an open mind. That's awesome. I appreciate it. If you're watching, thank you so much. And if you're listening, I appreciate it as well. Feel free to subscribe if you like what you hear today. Don't take ourselves too seriously. That's what this episode is about. There's a dark side of leadership when it comes to taking ourselves too serious. Number one, leaders are not Greek gods or goddesses. Let's just take that off the table. And I don't think we're not placed in a position of leadership because of some metaphysical power or divine calling from some higher and non-mortal authority. So what's the problem with this thinking? If I believe I've been placed into a position of leadership from a higher power, then I may have a real tendency to abuse that power and that position. I can think that my ideas can't be challenged, or that I can convince or persuade people to do nearly anything, even if it's against their rational judgments. A very dark and extreme example of this was Jim Jones and the Jonestown Massacre of 1978. I think there was 913 people were convinced to drink a cyanide-laced punch. 304 of those were kids. And Jim Jones was a cult leader, a leader nonetheless. He was known as a leader. He was well respected in the 60s and 70s. A lot of people looked up to him, and he abused his power, abused his authority in the most extreme way. He took himself too serious, way too serious. He was known to call himself a prophet, could see the future, thought himself as omniscient. That's a dark side of leadership. And again, it's extreme, but it's a real example. And it's the extreme example of when a person in a leadership role takes themselves way too serious. So let's turn to more day-to-day, not necessarily lighthearted, but let's turn to a more less extreme example. So what's the problem of taking ourselves too serious as leaders? I think, first of all, Leadosophy believes that this could have a negative effect on our self-image. If we take ourselves too serious, then our image may become the focus of our actions and decisions. We become image conscious. That's what I believe. We become so focused on our image that it'll influence how we act, how we decide, even maybe how we treat others. We become afraid to fail, right? Afraid not to have a decision at the ready when someone needs one. We're afraid to say, I don't know, or to laugh at a joke. Might be afraid to show our authentic side or our authentic self. Maybe afraid to show any emotion at all. We're emotional creatures. That's the bottom line. Bottom line up front is we're humans and we're emotional, and we have emotions that affect us. We try to minimize that, obviously, and let our more rational brain take over the lizard brain. So my wife last week was on a leadership panel for the Coast Guard Academy, talking about women in leadership roles. And I got this idea of not taking ourselves too serious from her, not necessarily the idea of the dark side of leadership and the Jim Joneses of the world, that used to exist, and they're still out there, I'm sure. But my wife was on this panel, and she was talking about humility. My wife talks about humility a lot, and she's very, very classy in how she displays her humility. She's a very humble person. She's always very aware of the decisions she makes and knowing that she doesn't always have all the answers. But she was asked a question, and she told me this story. She was asked a question and about, it was kind of about humility and mentoring, and she said that she told a story of, so she's at a Coast Guard station, and a lot of Coast Guard units have Coast Guard cadets from the academy come out during the summertime when they're not in school, and they shadow the active duty Coast Guard members on their day-to-day jobs, and they learn about the mission and things like that. So she told me that she was leading, she took a handful of Coast Guard cadets, academy cadets, on a run, and it was a trail run through the hills near Cape Disappointment. And she was kind of leading the pack on the run, and she fell, tripped down the hill, dirty, muddy, probably pride took a little bit of a hit. And she got up and she dusted herself off. She kind of laughed a little bit, and she just continued on. And she, again, not a lot of people could do that. A lot of people would be embarrassed that they fell in front of a bunch of people that they were leading. They were, this person is looked to as the leader, maybe the stoic person or whatever it is. And, they can't fail or they don't make mistakes. And then, here my wife is, she's leading these group of people on a run and just takes a trip, takes a tumble. And, she brushed it off and kept moving. And that was a pretty powerful story that she told me, that she told everyone else on this panel. And that's what led to this episode of not taking ourselves too serious as leaders. We are all prone to mistakes. And that's my first point I think I want to make. All leaders are prone to mistakes. You must expect to fail in front of others. And you must expect to fail more than once. It's going to happen. Bottom line. Forgive yourself. It's okay. Or we hope these mistakes aren't catastrophic. We hope they don't ruin our careers or whatever it might be. But we're going to make mistakes nonetheless. And I think that's important to keep in mind. No leader is omniscient. Going back to the Jim Jones example, there are no leaders out there that are prophets, even if they claim that they can see the future. They can't predict what's going to happen in the future. They can try. They can talk about probabilities. They can take all the information that we have. At the end of the day, all a leader has is best guesses, especially when faced with making decisions about the future and how those decisions are going to affect others. All a leader can do, all we can do, all you can do as a leader is make decisions with the best information you have at hand and try to make the best decision based on what the outcomes may be. You can't foresee the outcomes. You can try to predict them, but at the end of the day, they're guesses, and hopefully they're based on sound probability. Think about the probability of things that can go wrong or go right. Also, vulnerability is a key. When I think about my wife's story of her falling on a run, leading a bunch of Coast Guard cadets on a run, I think that was a very vulnerable moment for her. Like, hey, I am human. I trip and fall like everyone else. But I think that can work to your advantage. I think it's important to not act like you're a robot in a leadership role. And I think it's important for followers not to see leaders as these automatons that don't fail. They always have the right decision. They never show any emotion. They're always going to lead you down the right path. That's just not true. It's just not true. Leaders have emotions and fears and anxieties just like everyone else. And that's part of being vulnerable, and I think it's important. Followers not looking to be led by the pure stoic, nor the ultimate sage who provides high wisdom at every moment. That's not what followers are looking to the leader for. They want knowledge, tools, and resources to do their jobs, and hopefully do their jobs well, and they want to flourish like anyone else. They want to find their own inspiration. They want to find their own intrinsic motivation. And I think it's important to look at followers like that, like they have their own purpose, they have their own meaning. I think it's important to not try to put out this image like you're the ultimate stoic or you have all of the wisdom. I think if you believe you have all of the wisdom, you have shut your mind down to receiving more feedback, taking in new information, and even hearing ideas from other people. That could be a problem. So if you are going to take some things serious, this is what Leadosophy urges you to take serious, or maybe anyone. These are just some recommendations. Take them or leave them. Take serious how your actions and decisions affect the lives of others. That is something we should take serious. Take serious how we treat others, right? Kindness, empathy, compassion, dignity. It's the golden rule. Leadership, I believe, sometimes can just come down to the golden rule. Treat others like you want to be treated. We can take serious our ability to influence and inspire, and how others may simply do whatever you tell them just because you are the designated leader. A lot of followers will do what you tell them simply because you are in a position. We have to be mindful of that. Our words matter. Our actions matter. We got to take serious the importance of every interaction we have and the impact we have within our sphere of influence, our impact on those within our sphere of influence. And at the end of the day, you have to take serious. We must take serious. A leader should take serious the responsibility that comes with power and authority. And these two concepts are not the same, power and authority. But I believe Leadosophy believes they both equally deserve a warning label. And that label may read something like this. Warning, the misuse of power and authority can cause catastrophic damage to those you lead. And we'll end with that. Don't take yourselves too serious. Definitely take serious the impact you have on others, the impact you can have on others, the importance of leading and inspiring, not leading people down the road of negative consequences. There are some things we can take serious, but remember our self-image could potentially take a hit if we do take ourselves too serious. Don't be afraid to fail. It's going to happen. And I think that's one of the most important things. We're going to fail. To err is human, as James Reason once said. Thanks for listening to this episode of Leadosophy. Remember, Leadosophy is about using the tools of philosophical thought to deepen our understanding of leadership and of life. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks for watching and listening to another episode of Leadosophy. If you liked what you heard today, hit that subscribe button and check out Leadosophy.com and learn more about Tim's ideas on philosophy and leadership. We'll see you next time.